important.
Yep.
Obviously, again, these hearings for me are more than for those of us who are present and for my colleagues. It's for the general public to hear it first from their director.
Yep, I agree.
So one example would be like the East Bay Bridge bike path. You know, what has been stalling that just from getting done?
Nothing's been stalling it. It was planned to be done 2 years from now in the future. What has happened there is that we had to close those two pedestrian bridges prematurely because, frankly, they were on the verge of collapsing into the rivers below them. The timbers supporting those were put in place in the 1890s. They were built post-Civil War, and those same timbers have been in the water since then. When we were advancing our design, which usually precedes a project by a couple of years, the engineers working on the new design for them found that many of the timbers below the waterline had absolutely no wood supporting them anymore. It had completely eroded away so that some of them were actually hanging rather than supporting the bridge. In addition to that, they found that timbers on the bridge itself had been eaten away over the last several decades by insects, so that what appeared to be a substantial piece of timber on the outside was actually hollow on the inside, on the verge of not being able to even support its own weight. The engineers and the structural engineers came back to us with a report that basically said that anyone walking or occupying that bridge was in imminent danger. And they recommended that we close the bridges. We had that analysis reaffirmed separately by a separate set of structural engineers. And they came back with the same analysis. We determined that we had to close the bridge. So on a project where we would typically close the bridge just prior to the reconstruction to minimize the amount in time that that people are inconvenienced by it. In this case, because there had been a bridge in place since the 1800s that had never been repaired or rebuilt in any way. And some years ago, former DOTs and former administrations chose to put a bike path on top of that deficient structure. We found ourselves in a position of not having the funding or the timing to advance that project for another 2 years at a time when we had to close the bridge. In addition to that, the detailed engineering analysis uncovered not only were there additional costs involved with the structure itself, but there are utilities that exist along and across those structures that would require relocation and or have to be dealt with in the reconstruction. That made what was originally anticipated as being a $10 million repair project into a $25 million reconstruction project. So we are tasked now with, in some way, trying to create a safe passage for people using the bike path for the 2-year period that it's going to take us to come up with a solution of replacing those bridges. What we have done is we have actively engaged with the East Bay legislators, the local residents, and the local town officials to create a plan that we have already started construction of, that we should complete by the middle or end of the summer, that will put in place for a period of time a dedicated, secure, safe, and independent bicycle and pedestrian pathway that will get from one side of the two rivers to the other side of the two rivers in a protected bike path. All of the adults and children that have been using those two structurally deficient pedestrian bridges. And we're building that as we speak. We're putting the necessary safety features in place to protect people and give them an uninterrupted bicycle ride in a dedicated pathway that is separated safely and barricaded safely from adjacent traffic. And we'll put that in place while we develop a solution to this dilemma that we're in there.
So during the May 6th public hearing, where Mr. Rocchio stated that DOT did not have the funds, he wasn't aware of the 2-year plan?
No, he was presenting the 2-year plan.
So the 2-year plan, you're forecasting 2 years out so we could raise the money to have that?
Well, not only raise the money, but to find a solution that would hopefully bring the cost down a bit.
Well, talking about cost, during COVID, everything has gone up. I mean, we see studs and wood and all types of material going up. Has this situation impacted your cost across the board? How much has material gone up for you? Because I mean, that's a significant detriment to scheduling and also to funding. I mean, these are shortcomings that we have to make up, right?
I'm happy to say that most of the bridges and roads that we built are not being built using timber, nor would the replacement for these particular bridges be built with timber again, simply because we don't want what happened to these structures to happen again.
I mean, steel and concrete, sir.
So the steel and concrete costs have gone up, but they've escalated at what we anticipated to be and budgeted for. The timber prices have gone up substantially. Yeah. So for stick-built houses and the kinds of construction that rely on timber products, there has been a considerable impact, but we have not noticed that in our recent bids.
Okay, great.